Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. Welcome to day 1120. The Senate approved $95 billion in aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan by a 70-29 vote. Despite efforts by Trump, hard-right Republicans, and House Speaker Mike Johnson to kill the legislation, Senate Republican support for the deal increased overnight, with 22 Republican senators voting in favor of the package. Hours before the vote, Johnson preemptively rejected the legislation and said he wouldn't bring the Senate package to the House floor for a vote. Also, many hard-right Republicans have threatened to oust Johnson if he brings the legislation up in the House. Democrats, however, are also limited in their options to bring the legislation to the floor. It would require a bipartisan group of lawmakers getting 218 members to sign on to a discharge petition in order to circumvent Republican leadership and force a floor vote. Discharge petitions rarely succeed. Biden has also called on House Republicans to pass the aid package, saying, "Supporting this bill is standing up to Putin. We can't walk away now. That's what Putin is betting on." Meanwhile, the Supreme Court gave special counsel Jack Smith a week to respond to Trump's request to delay his federal criminal election subversion trial. Trump is appealing a court ruling that unanimously rejected his claim that he's absolutely immune from criminal charges for actions that he took while in office. But Smith has already urged the Supreme Court to resolve the immunity dispute quickly so that Trump's trial, which was originally set for March 4th, can begin later this year, although the court may take its time reviewing the broader questions related to the issue of immunity. Moving on, inflation eased in January, slowing from 3.4% to 3.1% on a 12-month basis. Excluding food and fuel, core prices were flat at 3.9% compared with December, and on a monthly basis, the CPI rose by 0.3% from December to January, up from a 0.2% increase the previous month. Economists, however, were expecting inflation to ease to 0.2% from December, which is 2.9% annually. The latest report puts pressure on the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates higher for longer as officials wait for further evidence that inflation is headed back down to their 2% target. Meanwhile, a new report found that more than 125 million Americans will be exposed to unhealthy levels of air pollution by the year 2050 as a result of climate change. After decades of success reining in pollution from smokestacks and tailpipes thanks to regulations like the 1970 Clean Air Act, climate change-related events are expected to cause a steady deterioration in U.S. air quality through 2054. The study found that extreme heat, drought, and wildfires are increasing the prevalence of both tropospheric ozone and particulate matter, commonly referred to as PM 2.5. Currently, about 83 million Americans, 1 in 4, are already exposed to unhealthy air quality every year. But by the year 2054, more than 125 million Americans will be exposed to at least one day of unhealthy air quality each year. 11 million will face at least one day of very unhealthy air quality, and 2 million will be exposed to at least one day of hazardous air quality. And finally, the Atlantic Ocean's currents are heading towards a tipping point that would be bad news for the climate system and humanity. The AMOC, or Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, carries warm water from the tropics to the North Atlantic, where it cools, becomes saltier, and sinks deeper into the ocean before sending the cooler water south along the ocean floor. But as human-caused global heating melts the Greenland ice sheet, fresh water is released into the North Atlantic, diluting the dense and salty sea and slowing the AMOC. Research suggests that once the system passes this tipping point, Western Europe would start to cool down by as much as 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit every decade, and sea levels in the North Atlantic would surge by around 3.3 feet. The southern hemisphere would also become warmer, the bottom of the ocean would run short on oxygen, and the Amazon's wet and dry seasons could flip, potentially pushing the already weakened rainforest past its own tipping point. The AMOC has declined 15% since 1950, and is in its weakest state in more than a millennium, according to previous research. The authors of the latest study warn the temperature, sea level, and precipitation changes will severely affect society and the climate shifts are unstoppable on human timescales. Adding, what surprised us was the rate at which tipping occurs. It will be devastating. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditis.